Welcome to Indian Orthodox Theological Association, in short form IOTA. Today we begin with our first live streaming session of IOTA, a lay organized initiative for academic theological development of Indian Orthodox tradition. Though not an official body of the church, we are focused on encouraging scholars and lay thinkers to contribute to Orthodox theology. Our goal is to bring together theology, history, and Indian thought, shaping a voice that is deeply Orthodox and distinctly Indian. It is therefore fitting for our first live session, we have Mr. George Alexander. Mr. Alexander brings 16 years of expertise in the fields of human resource, management, and community development across diverse sectors. He holds an MPhil in social sciences and was a gold medalist and first rank holder in Master of Social Work (MSW) from University of Kerala. Beyond his professional career, Mr. Alexander is also a distinguished author and researcher with 13 published books and numerous scholarly contributions to Orthodox Christian studies. Some of his most notable works include A Hindu Church and Indian Christ, Western Rites of Syriac Malankara Orthodox Churches, and his editorial work on the Malankara Nasrani research paper. His engagement with Orthodox thought has also reached international platforms, having presented our tradition at Inter-Parliamentary Assembly on Orthodoxy at Greece. Today, Mr. Alexander will guide us through a forgotten chapter of Indian Christian history, the Independent Catholic Church. This historic community is also known as Western Rite Orthodox Church, and at its heart, we have its leader, Metropolitan Archbishop Alvarius Julius, who envisioned an autonomous and indigenous church aligned within the spiritual protection and commitment of the Malankara Church. And it is particularly meaningful that we are discussing his life and the legacy and history of this community just after the commemoration of his death anniversary on September 24th. Mr. Don is, along with us, is a widely recognized ecumenical individual, deeply respected and acknowledged within the Orthodox community and beyond. And now, with immense joy and gratitude, I warmly welcome our speaker and panel. Now, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Jarin, and thank you so much, the IOTA community, for this wonderful opportunity. It's a very interesting topic. I think we will directly go to the presentation. So today we are discussing Independent Catholic or Western Rite Orthodox and the Malankara Church, a community lost in disguise. So before moving on to the core subject area, I would just like to explain how I got associated with the topic. Actually, I used to be the founding secretary of an organization called Orthodoxy Cognate Page for over 15 years. So my association with that organization led me to get associated with something called the Metropolitan Alvarez Julius Research Project, or shortly called as MARP. MARP actually, we started it in 2009 with a visit to the Brahmawar community, the existing Western Rite community of the Malankara Church, located in Brahmawar, Karnataka. Actually, from there, it was a very interesting, challenging academic journey. And as of now, MARP, or Metropolitan Alvarez Julius Research Project, is the world's largest Western Rite Orthodox research project. And it is also one of the longest and one of the most expensive Western Rite research project in the Indian subcontinent, costing over $10,000, fully funded by the Orthodoxy Cognate Page Society. If you go to the Metropolitan Alvarez Julius Research Project web portal, you can see the details, you can read the articles, you come to know about the people involved. So as an intro, I will just run through what we've been doing through Metropolitan Alvarez Julius Research Project. Actually, in 2009, after our visit, we actually call it a historic visit because that was for the first time some pan-Orthodox entity was visiting Brahmawar. And after the visit, after getting to know about their life, their circumstances, we actually created a report. We drafted a report, and it was submitted to the synod of the Malankara Church. With that report, or beyond the discussions, actually the synod decided to constitute the Brahmawar diocese. So, but our work continued beyond the constitution of the Brahmawar diocese, because the whole Western Rite history of the Malankara Church, also in association with the Syriac Patriarchate, is just like an ocean. It cannot be put in certain books just as a research document or a readable document. It is much beyond and extensive than an academic interest, actually, because there's a lot of people, lot of organization, lot of community involved. So as you can see, what we've been doing through MARP, we've done documentations, we have made field visits, we have gone through primary investigations, we have met with people, we've been into web portal, article publishing, meeting a lot of people, meeting with the debris of what you call the remaining part of the Western Rite of the Malankara Church. And we've come across a lot of wonderful people, wonderful experiences. We made a lot of rediscoveries actually in the field, the mission field of Western Rite. We actually rediscovered a lot of lost parish communities, churches, and stuff like that. And on the whole, we were able to produce 2 published books from our experiences. Part 1 and Part 2 of the Western Rite of the Syriac and Malankara Orthodox churches. I would not call it a systematic or a complete, academic a journey on Western Rite, but because of our journey, our experiences, you may see the reflections and experiences of this team who investigated about the lost part of the Malankara Church, the lost history of the Malankara Church in those books. So, why a project called MARP actually? It helps to promote academic dialogue, a more accurate understanding of the historical aspects of the Western Rite community. And also, it served as a crucial resource for understanding a unique and often overlooked aspect of Western Rite Orthodox Christian history. Actually, when we published the book, actually many people were commenting that actually this part, the Western Rite history of the Malankara Church in association with the Syriac Orthodox Patriarchate and other independent Catholic communities, has been forgotten for a long time. Of course, we know this and that, but what actually happened during the time was completely ignored. And it is, and OCP was the first pan-Orthodox Christian organization to commission an exclusive research project on Western rites within the Oriental Orthodox churches. And also, it was like a research it involved a lot of process of learning by doing, because it was a trial and error method. We actually initially, when we started we initially aimed to understand everything from an Orthodox Christian viewpoint. But as we moved ahead, we had to change our perspective, our understanding of history of Western Rite Orthodox communities. And it was a great learning, actually. A learning that we never expected. So in this regard, I would also like to thank a lot of people who were involved with this research, MARP research. And you can see the names displayed. like Dr. Ajay Philip, he was actually leading the Western Rite project along with Father Thomas Georgis. These guys, these individuals, they have contributed a lot in actually understanding the Western Rite community. And of course, you can read a lot of bishops, a lot of people, laymen, contributed one way or other to the success of this project. So that's all about Mark. And I think we will move on to the Western Rite, core area of Western Rite research. So before that, I have a certain disclaimer. This presentation consists of information acquired from my previous association with Mark in various aspects. The information presented does not align with the established historical understanding put forward by the Malankara church scholars, clergy, and historians. This presentation doesn't cover each and every aspect of Western Rite. There shall be missing links because I've already mentioned that it's like a huge ocean. The presentation also includes various critics. So before we move on to the Western Rite Church of the Malankara Church in association with the Syriac Patriarchate, we need to understanding the beginning. The beginning was all about Padrado versus propaganda fide. And as we are all aware, Padrado was actually a religious political agreement between the Holy See or the Vatican and the Portuguese and Spanish kings, where they were given exclusive rights and responsibilities for evangelization in the eastern lands, erecting churches, appointing bishops. It was like a free hand given to the Portuguese and Spanish kings. So they actually did a great job in the from the perspective of Vatican or the Holy See. So what happened was that as time passed by, the Portuguese and the Spanish kingdoms began to crumble, or let us say that they began to lose the influences because there was the rise of the British Empire. So the Vatican understood that, okay, it is better to interfere in the system, cancel Padrado, and bring in a new system. And in 1622, they established a new system called propaganda fide. That means the Vatican directly started appointing apostolic vicaries, erecting churches, evangelization of people in the eastern lands, appointing bishops, and also other aspects of evangelizations. So this actually resulted in jurisdictional clash because many people, they were familiar with Padrado, and Padrado was very active in the Indian subcontinent, particularly in Goa and other parts of India, in the southern part of India. And the Padrado insisted that all Catholic missions in the East were subjected to the Archbishop of Goa, who was appointed by the Portuguese crown. So when propaganda fide came into picture, it established its own apostolic vicariates with bishops who were loyal to Rome and not to Lisbon. So this actually resulted in a great clash. It created a confusion. It resulted in schisms where local Catholic communities, particularly places in India, as I've mentioned earlier, Bombay and Goa, where most of these people were actually loyal to the Padrado system. And they couldn't digest the aspect that the Padrado system was actually cancelled and something new was put in to replace that system. So actually the situation was very funny that one faction would follow the Padrado clergy while the other would adhere to the authority of the propaganda fide. So that was actually, and this was the main root or the cause for the development of independent Catholic movement or Western Rite Orthodox movement in the Indian subcontinent. So speaking of Western Rite Orthodox communities, we need to speak about the leadership first. First, we will speak about the leaders who were involved, who were leading the community. Then we will go to the details of the church. So we have, of course, the star of the Western Rite movement, that is Antonio Francisco Xavier Alvarez. We call him Alvarez Tirimeni or Metropolitan Archbishop Alvarez Julius. He was a native of Goa, and he doesn't need actually a big introduction because he is very familiar with people are quite, Malankara Nasranis and other Christian communities are quite familiar with Archbishop Alvarez Julius. But we will, for the sake of the presentation, I'll just run through the details. And he was actually a great and strong supporter of the Roman Catholic Padrado system. And He used to serve after his theological education. He used to serve in parishes in Bombay after completing his seminary. He was deadly against the propaganda fide because he understood it's an external interference in the local affairs. So he could not find a solution. So what he rebelled against the new system, and he had to face a lot of problems, because during the time we need to understand that the church and the state in Goa was the same. So he could not stand the pressure from the Archbishop or the Patriarch of Goa and from the state. So he had to leave the Roman Catholic Church, and he established something called Patrado Defense Association, PDA. This is actually the beginning of the Western Rite community in association with the Malankara Church and the Syriac Patriarchate. This later became the Independent Catholic Church, also known as the Independent Catholic Church of Ceylon, Goa, and India. And many people actually, they are unaware of the fact that Alvarez Julius, Metropolitan Alvarez Julius, actually he constituted something called PDA, or Patrado Defense Association. So further going into his life history, he became actually the head of the Independent Catholic Church under the spiritual guidance of the Syriac Patriarchate and the Malankara Church. And he was a person driven by patriotic or Swadeshi vision to align with an indigenous church. They say that actually he requested help from the Malankara Church because he understood that Malankara Church was an indigenous Swadeshi church. That was one reason. Also, he understood that it was better for him to move out of the Portuguese territory and to work in the British territory. So it will be more easy for him to propagate the ideals of the Western Rite or the independent Catholicism. And you know that, as we all know, that Archbishop Alvarez Julius, he used to be a literary giant. He used to run a lot of newspapers. He used to be a political leader, a prominent social and political leader in Goa. And he was executed by the Catholic Church and imprisoned by Portuguese authorities. This excommunication, excommunication in the sense it was so severe. So while visiting Goa, I spoke to a few people regarding the excommunication of Alvarez Julius. These are the old communities still existing in Goa. And they used to say that excommunication those days were so severe that you are not even supposed to talk to the person who was excommunicated from the Catholic Church, because the church and the state was so powerful. If you speak to that person, there are chances that you also get excommunicated from the community or from the church. So just imagine the kind of severity of excommunication that Alvarez had to face during the time. But he was not ready to give up. He, through his newspapers, Obrado Indiano or A Cruz, he promoted Swadeshi ideologies to foster Goan unity. And he urged Goan people to boycott Portuguese goods and lifestyles. And he also supported the Goan cause. And the thing is that he received a lot of support from lay people, the commoners, because they were all actually agitated with the rule of the Portuguese government in Goa. So he got a lot of support, but ecclesiastical level, he was completely sidelined, isolated, and excommunicated. He can be considered as a patriotic leader, and he actually believed, as I said earlier, in Swadeshi movement. So he promoted a lot of agricultural aspects because he believed that agriculture sector was essential for saving the economy. And he was also emphasizing the importance of natural resources very wisely and efficiently. And he encouraged Goan people. It's very interesting. See, he encouraged Goan people to cultivate tapioca, cassava. And also he urged to understand the economic value of local coconut and mango cultivation. So on the whole, Alvarez Julius was a community and religious leader, scholar, educationalist, philanthropist, literary figure, political and social religious activist, and Swadeshi and whatnot. He was a completely multifaceted personality. Now we will move on to the second person in focus, the leadership in focus. That is Dr. Pedro Manuel Lisboa Pinto. He was a very close associate of Alvarez Julius. Actually, he was again a hardcore Padrado supporter. He even traveled to Portuguese those days to speak to the bishops and to the king, just to reinstate the Padrado system, but he was unsuccessful. And Pedro Manuel Lisboa Pinto, he was a medical doctor. He was the first lay trustee of the Independent Catholic Church. And so from Goa, both Alvarez and Pedro Manuel Lisboa Pinto and their friends, they had to move to Ceylon because it was a British territory. And also the situation was quite positive for them to propagate their independent Catholic ideologies. And also, it is very important for us to understand that these leaders of the independent Catholic Church, whether it be Dr. Pinto or Alvarez Julius, they were all active in the socio-political and religious sphere in Ceylon and elsewhere. So that makes them important. More than the religious aspect, they were very active in the social and political religious sphere in Ceylon. So while going through the old documents, we were actually shocked to find that Dr. Pinto was responsible for constituting the first printers union in Sri Lanka or in Ceylon. Many of the people are unaware of the fact that he was the person responsible, along with other social activists, to constitute a printers union in Ceylon. And also, he was very outspoken. He was a very outspoken person. And he actually, through the Independent Catholic magazine, which was the official publication of the Independent Catholic Church of Ceylon, Goa, and India, he vehemently criticized the socio-political system that existed in Ceylon. He spoke for the printers, people who were involved in printing business, and he criticized the educational system that existed during the time. And he was involved with anti-alcoholic movement, and even he became the first president of the Ceylon Printers Union. So you can just imagine the sort of socio-political involvements the leaders of Independent Catholic Church had during the time. And it's an interesting fact, Dr. Pinto was the uncle of the well-known Sri Lankan journalist Arma de Souza. The third leader in focus is Stephen De Silva, again a staunch independent Catholic and lawyer. He was again associated with the printing industry. He was a social activist and church activist. But during the time, because once Pinto passed away, Stephen De Silva had to take up the lay leadership of the church. He faced a lot of challenges from the Roman Catholic Church. He dealt with a lot of crises where many priests died from epidemics like cholera. He was the person to request to consecrate a new archbishop, a native priest from the Malankara Church and the Syriac Orthodox Patriarchate, but was denied. He communicated with similar independent Catholic churches, communities worldwide, particularly Independent Catholic Church of Philippines, to help them. He even penned letters to the Independent Catholic Church in Philippines, also known as the Anglican Church, to save the church, the Independent Catholic Church in Ceylon, from total disintegration. Unfortunately, he was not successful. And the situation was very difficult. And the interesting fact, again, his granddaughter, Susan De Silva, was a founding member of the Lankan Samaja Party, LSSP. It was a left political oriented party. Again, leadership in focus, we have Padre Roque Lopez Nurono. He also doesn't need an introduction actually to Malankara Nazaranis. We know that he was a star in Brahma, and it is often believed and considered that it was due to the efforts of Padre Nurono, and it was the main reason for the survival of the Western Rite communities in Brahma as we see them today. He was an educationalist again. He was actually a strong supporter of Independent Catholic Church. He was involved with its administration, and also he was involved with the socio-political situation of the Brahmavarians. That's why that led him to open schools to students, and regardless of their caste, creed, or gender. Because during the times we know that it was difficult for people from the lower caste to get educated. And also he offered a lot of relief for the poor people who were suffering with disease, just like Alvarez. I would say that he was just following the footsteps of Alvarez, because Alvarez was a person who was born in charity, who lived for charity all his life. So just like Alvarez Julius, Padre Lopez Nurono had great contributions in the survival of Western Rite or the independent Catholic communities in Brahmawar. And he also faced, of course, significant trouble and persecution from the Roman Catholic Church. But he never gave up. He was so staunch that he even challenged the Roman Catholic community to prove that he was wrong. And I believe that from some of the documents we understand that he said that I would pay 500 rupees. That was a great sum during that time, that if you guys prove me wrong. And none of the Roman Catholics were able to take up the challenge. So that's an interesting thing about Padre Lopez Nurono. So again, leadership in focus, we have Archbishop René Villate, another interesting person who was a French-American prelate. He was also known as Mark Timotheus. He was actually became the Archbishop of the Christian Old Orthodox Catholic Rite Church of America, again consecrated by the prelates of the Malankara Church and Alvarez Julius. And we all know the story that they traveled, both St. Gregory of Parumala and Metropolitan Paul Athanasius. They all traveled to Ceylon to consecrate Archbishop René Villate. And as of now, there's been a lot of criticism that we will speak about René Villate in the next slide. As of now, there exists a community in Canada which traces their origin to the original church established by Archbishop René Villate. It's known as Christian Catholic Church Canada. It is presently under the leadership of Most Reverend Sergi Ethero, the fourth Bishop Ordinary in Canada. Bishop Sergi Ethero, thanks to him, he's contributed a lot in understanding the other side of Archbishop René Villate, because René Villate is actually considered to be a controversial figure. Of course, there were controversies associated with him, but at the same time, we need to understand that there was a different side of Archbishop René Villate, again ignored by the Malankara Church or the Western Rite history. And the Christian Orthodox Catholic Church of America, it was not a small entity. Actually, during its prime time, it had a lot of institutions, publications, as you can see. They had schools, they had seminaries, they had publications like Little Catholic Star, Old Catholic, and American Catholic. They even purchased 50,000 acres of land in Mexico to name it after Villate. A lot of organizations they developed during that time, but unfortunately, due to various reasons, they couldn't. These land or these institutions couldn't survive. What survives as of now is the Christian Catholic Church Canada and a numerous endless number of Christian communities that claim to have lineage from Archbishop René Villate. Actually, there's an interesting fact. We have a prelate in Kerala, in Malankara. His name is Stephen Matabara. He's the head of the Anglican Church. It's an independent community based in Kottayam. He derives his episcopal lineage from Archbishop Villate. Actually, we had visited him. He actually gave us an interview, and it was very interesting to understand the lineage coming from Archbishop René Villate, who was consecrated by the Malankara prelates and the Western Rite Archbishop Alvarez Julius. So the questions on Archbishop René Villate, this has been going for a long time, because after a while the Syriac Patriarchate actually rejected Archbishop René Villate, because the Patriarchate did not want to associate with any groups that claims to have lineage from Archbishop René Villate. But the Malankara Church has neither denied or rejected Archbishop René Villate. We do not have any sort of official communication regarding that. But we always recognize that the Malankara Church always recognized the fact that he was consecrated by the Malankara prelates and Archbishop Alvarez Julius. It is said that his goal, Archbishop René Villate's goal, was to unite diverse national groups, Polish, Italian, Hungarian, African, and Swedish American, because there was a lot of communities migrating from different parts of the world, particularly Europe, from Europe to USA. So into a single independent Catholic body. So he consecrated auxiliary bishops for these various groups, eventually led to the formation of the autonomous churches like Polish National Catholic Church. A lot of churches actually claim the lineage from Archbishop René Villath. But the problem, so what are the criticisms against him? Allegations, they say that Villath is often seen as an unreliable prelate. Critics says that his frequent changes in allegiance and his shifting ecclesiastical status. And he's accused of not honoring his pledge to the Syriac Orthodox Patriarchate and Malankara Church. He briefly rejoined the Roman Catholic Church because he was a Roman Catholic Church by birth, but with the papal acceptance. But however, he moved out of the Roman Catholic Church because he was not allowed to celebrate Holy Mass. He returned to his own people and a group of independent Galatians, a group of independent Catholics in France. Unfortunately, he passed away in France itself, taken care by Roman Catholic prelates and servant from USA. And unfortunately, he was buried in a common cemetery. We are not sure who were actually present during the funeral service or what was the situation during the time. Anyway, René Villath actually dedicated his life to create an independent Catholic movement or independent Catholic church for the immigrants groups in America. But because of his complex legacy, due to some of his actions, he was actually, one way or the other, knowingly or unknowingly, he was instrumental in the creation of several independent churches. If you go to the Google and search René Villath lineage, you can find a lot of churches claiming to be originating from the apostolic lineage or the lineage of Archbishop René Villath. On the whole, speaking of the independent Catholic leaders, we understand that these people, the Western Rite Orthodox leaders of the Malankara Church, in association with the Malankara Church and Syriac Patriarchate, they were not only concerned about the ecclesiastical matter or spiritual aspects. Instead, they were deeply involved with ordinary people, immersed themselves in some of the most pressing social problems of the time that makes their contributions vital. So this is yet another leader of independent Catholic Church, because it's a curious case. That's why I have involved his case in the presentation. His name is Mar Basilio Soares, known as Father Luis Mariano Soares. He was actually a missionary priest, again from Goa, and he moved to Ceylon. He was working in different parts of Ceylon, especially in Manar, Jaffna, those places. Actually, after a while, he moved from the independent Catholic Church to the Chaldean Syrian Church, or known as the Syro-Chaldean Church. The reason actually remains unclear. We are not sure. Maybe as we progress further, we will come to know the reason. And he was consecrated as Mar Basilios, as the Metropolitan of India, Ceylon, Mylapore, Socotra, and Messina, by Mar Abdisho and Mar Michael Augustine. Mar Abdisho was again a prelate of the Chaldean Syrian Church in Thrissur, and Michael Augustine was a core bishop of the Chaldean Syrian Church. But that did not end there. Mar Basilios, as part of propagating his independent Catholic ideas, he consecrated Ulrich Vernon Herford as Mar Jacobs Herford in 902 in Dindigel. And before and after his consecration, very important to understand, Herford visited the independent Catholic Church in Ceylon, and he was welcomed by the community there. So some people criticize that Basilio Soares moved from the independent Catholic Church to the Chaldean Syrian Church because he had some sort of rift. But that was not the case. Because if he had some sort of rift, definitely independent Catholic communities would not be accepting Mar Jacobs. So that's very important to understand. And also it is exciting to know that he was known as Ceylon Ayya. Once he moved from Ceylon to the southern part of India, especially in Tamil Nadu, he had a cult following in Tamil Nadu. He led a simple life, struggling to guide the community that he had. He had a lot of difficulties from the Jesuits and the Roman Catholic Church, but he was highly respected and had significant social recognition among the people in Tamil Nadu. Unfortunately, he passed away due to cholera. And the sad part is that the Chaldean Syrian church, who consecrated him as Mar Basilius Soares, does not recognize or venerate him as their prelate, because they say that he never received the letter of acceptance from Catholicos Patriarch. So that part is little bit mysterious for us to understand why he did not receive and why he was consecrated as a bishop. As of now, we do not have that kind of documentation to understand. As I said earlier, maybe as we go further, we'll come to know that. And the sad part again, St. Anthony's Cathedral, Muttalagapetti, that is a place in Tamil Nadu very close to Dindigal. Dindigal was his area of operation. It still exists, unfortunately used as a shop. Actually, the team from Mark, under the leadership of Ajesh T. Philip, they had visited there and actually they took a photo. And it is so sad to see that that property is completely ignored. So that's all about Mar Basilius Soares, very interesting figure. And actually, I had the opportunity to visit the family of Mar Basilius Soares and Alvarez Julius during my visit to Goa, and they were very accommodative, and they were so surprised to learn a lot extra about additional facts about Mar Basilius Soares and Alvarez Julius from the research efforts of Mar. So apart from the leaders that we have discussed, we need to understand that a lot of people were involved with the development and propagation of the Western Rite Orthodox Church, also known as the Independent Catholic Church of Ceylon, Goa, and India. You may read the names on the slide. Metropolitan Pulicotal Dionysius, even Patriarch Peter III, he was known as Peter the Humble. Apart from sanctioning the consecration of Alvarez Julius and supporting the Western Rite communities of the Malankara Church, he also made a separate effort from his side to create Western Rite Orthodox communities or independent Catholic communities in the UK. So that's totally a different topic that we need a different presentation on that. His contributions was immense, and all those lay leaders, all those bishops, people who were involved with the propagation, the survival of this community. But unfortunately, after some time, even the Malankara Church and both the Syriac Orthodox Patriarchate both lost touching with the remaining debris of the independent Catholic communities in Ceylon and elsewhere. The only remaining community as of now we have is in Brahmawar. So moving on to the next part. So what was the independent Catholic or Western Rite Orthodox Church of Ceylon, Goa, and India? So why do you call them Western Rite Orthodox, and what is Western Rite? Western Rite Orthodox communities are Roman Catholic, Anglican, or Protestant communities that have entered into a union with an Orthodox church. They maintain their Western liturgy, customs, cultural practices, and historical traditions while adhering to the core tenets of Orthodox Christian faith. We may call it with Orthodox corrections in quotes. So they practice Western liturgy, Western customs, Western historical traditions with Orthodox corrections. So the movement led by Alvarez Julius falls into this category. And looking into the administration, the independent Catholic mission or the church was not a byproduct or outcome of Malankara Church or Syriac Patriarchate's missionary efforts. They voluntarily approached the Malankara Church to be under its spiritual protection. The independent Catholic Church was almost a fully autonomous church. I would call it a fully autocephalous church, of course, under the spiritual protection of the Malankara Church. Alvarez Julius was actually a member of the Synod and also the association. And its history is closely tied to the social, political, and religious climate of the time, particularly in Portuguese Goa and British Ceylon. They did not submit to the Malankara Church or to the Syriac Patriarchate, even while under their spiritual protection. This is very important to understand because many people still believe that Alvarez Julius submitted himself completely, his community completely to the synod or to the administration of the Malankara Church. No, it is not right. Actually, they have not submitted. So a close look into the profession of faith of the independent Catholics of Ceylon, Goa, and India. See, they say that we accept the Bible as the inspired word of God. We accept teachings of all general ecumenical council. We believe that apostles of our Lord themselves believed. Our creed is Catholic, Apostolic, Nicene Creed, and we receive ecclesiastical history and traditions as the Roman Catholic theologians define them. That is very important. As the Roman Catholic theologians define them. This profession of faith was published in the Independent Catholic newspaper magazine of March 1896 edition. So it is very clear that they were following the Roman Catholic traditions, systems, practices, but aligning with the Orthodox faith and Orthodox Church. So what was the relationship with the Malankara Church? The Malankara Church leadership did not interfere in the internal affairs of the Independent Catholic Church to ensure that their autonomy, culture, traditions are not disturbed, but provide all the required support. This is very important. They never interfered in the internal affairs of the church led by Alvarez Julius. It was an attachment with a detachment. At the same time, a detachment with an attachment. That is very interesting to understand. That was actually the core structure of the Independent Catholic Church and its relationship with the Malankara Church. I just repeat it again. It was an attachment with detachment, at the same time a detachment with an attachment. So at its peak, this church has established communities. It had communities in Ceylon, now known as Sri Lanka, various parts of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, particularly in the coastal belt, among the pearl fishing communities. It had sympathizers and a small presence in Goa, because Goa was not actually a good place for them to work. It had communities in Maharashtra, and also it had a very minute community in Cochin. So what were the institutions run? It had the Independent Catholic Sunday School, its own Sunday School. It had the Independent Catholic Women's Association, a newspaper. It had an Independent Catholic school in Jaffna, and Jaffna school was actually managed by Basilius Soares. It had a printing press established by Alvarez Julius. Any schools and charity or institutions established by Alvarez Julius in Goa and other parts of South India. Institutions established in Brahmawar by Father Padre Lopez Nuron. So this was all about the institution and administration and the growth of the Independent Catholic Church of Ceylon, Goa, and India. But this is not limited to it. If you go further, if you delve yourself further into the documents and the history, you may come across further details. So it expanded. Yes, of course, it expanded by the consecration of René Villath. It expanded to US as the Christian Old Orthodox Catholic Rite Church of America, founded by Archbishop René Villath. Also, it had some expansion in England. There were some communications going between Alvarez Julius and a few prelates in England, but that could not establish itself as the way Ceylon Church established or René Villath's community established. So there's an interesting fact. Again, I told previously that we had a small community in Cochin. Padre Peter Lima from Saudi. Saudi is a place in Cochin. That's a Latin Catholic church as well. Actually, he joined the church of Alvarez Julius. And that fact was actually mentioned in Edavaga Patriya. It was the official magazine of the Malankara Church. It clearly mentions that the Saudi parish member, Padre Peter Lima, has joined the Independent Catholic Church of Alvarez Julius. Actually, we went behind Padre Peter Lima, and we understood that from our research, we understood that there might have been a small Independent Catholic community who supported Padrado system in Saudi, but it could not survive. Maybe they existed for a few years. And Padre Peter Lima might have been a person from that community, but we do not have further documentation to prove the details of that community. And Father Peter Lima also remains as a mysterious character. We don't know what happened to him. At least from our research, we don't know what happened to him. Maybe further investigation may lead us to Padre Peter Lima and his fate. So from where do we understand all these things? We have published resources like Independent Catholic newspaper. These newspaper copies are still available in the National Archives of Sri Lanka, situated in Colombo. There are published materials by Alvarez Julius and other Malankara prelates, articles, books, research thesis, newspaper, documents, interviews, and logical deductions. From all these aspects, that we can easily conclude that Alvarez Julius or his community was fully independent community, but under the spiritual protection of the Malankara Church in association with the Syriac Patriarchate, with an independent Catholic tradition, and they did not submit themselves fully to the Malankara Church nor to the Syriac Patriarchate. But these books, articles are not enough. I would always suggest that a new research publication or book on Western Rite Orthodoxy in association with the Malankara Church and the Syriac Patriarchate, with an objective outlook from the Western Rite perspective, shall be published. If someone can take that effort, that would be nice. And it should be published in multiple language. And it should be actually, included in the syllabus, in the seminary syllabus or in the Sunday school syllabus. And it should be made readily accessible to the public, because it's a very interesting aspect to understand the way which they worked, the things they were involved. And what we see is just a drop of the ocean. This is much more than what we have researched or what we have come across or what we have published in our articles or books. So, again, what happened to the independent Catholic community, church? It declined. Over the years, it declined. Administrative leadership problems and internal conflicts. Even though we say that Alvarez Julius was an able administrator or he was a great figure, he had problems. He had conflicts with the communities in Ceylon. There were financial issues. There were a little bit of scams happening because some people were involved in financial scams in the church in Ceylon. And there were lack of priests, actually. And the plea from the Ceylon community, it fall on deaf ears, actually. There was no proper succession lines. Refusal of the Malankara Church to ordain new bishops or priests, irrespective of the request from Independent Catholic Mission or the Independent Catholic Church. Threats from Roman Catholic Church. And due to the lack of care, many Independent Catholic community people, faithful, returned to the Roman Catholic Church. And in Sri Lanka, many of them returned to other denominations. If you travel through the former missionary areas of Alvarez Julius in southern part of India, you can still find old independent Catholic parish buildings still existing near to the present Roman Latin Catholic parishes. They're still there. And of course, another problem was the Syriac Malankara dispute between the Syriac Orthodox Church and the Malankara Church, and also the fading support from the Malankara Church. Apart from appealing to the Philippines Independent Catholic Church or the Anglican Church, these people, out of their desperate situation, they even appealed to the Greek and Russian Orthodox churches to accept them, at least to protect them, so that they would not get disintegrated. Unfortunately, because of their Western Rite and independent Catholic traditions, even though there were some sort of discussions and debates between the independent Catholic community and the Russian and Greek churches, nothing materialized. It was understood that the Greek church was not particularly interested because of their Western Rite Orthodox traditions, because they were not in a position to accept a community with independent Catholic tradition. So today, the only major remnant of debris of the independent Catholic movement of Alvarez Julius is the Konkani community in Brahmawar, Karnataka. And let us thank the efforts of Padre Roque Lopez Nurono for that. So we come to the critical part of the presentation. Actually, these community that remain in Brahmawar or some parts of Karnataka, these people actually, they've gone through a lot of suffering. They were actually humiliated. First, they were humiliated by the Latin Catholic Church, by the Rome, when they requested that please reinstate propaganda fide instead of, please reinstate Padrado instead of propaganda fide. Please do not, force us to be part of propaganda fide. But Rome humiliated them, stating that we are not in a position to change our decisions for a few fishermen or drunkards in Goa or Kalyanpur. That was a great humiliation for them. And such kind of humiliations also played a part for them to join the independent Catholic movement. After being humiliated by Rome, the community was part of the spirit under the spiritual protection of the Malankara Church. It joined the Malankara Church. Again, after the time of Alvarez Julius, after the disintegration of the community of the independent Catholic Church in Ceylon and elsewhere in southern part of India, those community which remained under the Malankara Church spiritual protection was in Brahmawar. So the church slowly began to impose things on this community. So it was basically a soft colonization by the Malankara Church, culture and religious domination. The Malankara Church itself says that it was historically persecuted by the foreign colonial churches and foreign powers. It is a victim of the cultural religious colonization. So Malankara Church for decades repeated the same colonial intrusion with the Brahmawar Western Rite Orthodox community. Through a process of soft colonization, it has taken place over the decades, where Oriental Orthodox beliefs, rituals, Syriacization, Malankarization were actually imposed on the Latin traditions of the Brahman community, leading to a loss of their true identity. So, again, some areas of concern. The Brahmawar community, as far as I understand, has been systematically marginalized in many ways. One, again, coming to their liturgical practices, unfamiliar liturgical practices and traditions have been imposed, changing their identity to Orthodox Syrian Christians. The Latin Rite has been fully replaced by the Syriac Rite with Malankara elements. The thing was that the Latin Rite was actually used until the 1980s, and if you go now, they have been using something of a mixed. I think 90 to 90% of Syriac and Malankara liturgical practices, and a 5% of Latin liturgical practices. The full autonomy of the community was revoked and reduced to a diocese. Of course, they created a diocese, but that was a mere diocese, not a Western Rite Orthodox autonomous diocese. Instead, they created it into a mere diocese. The St. Mary's Orthodox Syrian Cathedral, the change of the main cathedral's name, it was actually Syriacized by changing the name of the cathedral to St. Mary's Orthodox Syrian Cathedral. After Alvarez Julius, no bishops has been elected from the independent Catholic community. Constant portal of Alvarez Julius in Syriac Malankara attire. Of course, he used Syriac Malankara attire only when it was required, ignoring the fact that he was a pure Latin who only wore such garments when necessary. That is very clear from his photos that has been published in newspapers from Goa. That is actually available online. People can go and check. And he was not even using a skull cap. He was using a Cappello Romano hat. But of course, when he was with the Malankara prelates, he has actually taken part in the liturgy, or he has taken part in the concelebration in Malankara. As of now, managed by a Malayali bishop, the Brahmawar diocese headquarters is in Mangalore, which is 66 kilometers away from Brahmawar. Approximately 900 Konkani families with a population of 20,000 are served by 12 Konkani congregations, with the rest comprising Malayali parishes. Out of 29 priests, only 5 are Konkani people in the diocese. The managing committee, as of my understanding, has only 2 Konkani represented out of a total of 4 from the diocese, with the other 3 being Malayali. On the whole, their Western Rite Orthodox or independent Catholic nature has been completely compromised. Some other areas of concern. Many Malankara historians and scholars, they are unwilling to accept the historical fact, the independent church had full autonomy. There is a lack of publication discussing about the identity crisis of Brahmawar, Konkani Christians, even as many ethnic communities issues are being discussed today and debated today. Reluctance of the Malankara church scholars, historians, clergy to associate with certain independent organizations and scholars. Actually, we had that kind of experience. I'm not generalizing it, but some sort of such experience. Malankara church has not fully understood Alvarez Julius, Dr. Lisboa Pindo, or other leaders of the independent Catholic Church, hence did not properly elevate such social and cultural reformers. If you ask that who was the first president of the Printers Union in Ceylon, people will be saying some other name. And most of the Malankara Nasrani community, even the, I don't know, even the Brahmor community, they would not be knowing that Dr. Lisboa Pinto was the person who established first Printers Union in Ceylon. And also, Brahmor community, they have been addressed not as just as only Konkani Orthodox Christians, but their identity can be only established if they are addressed as the only Western Rite Orthodox Konkani Christians with an independent Catholic tradition. Only when they embrace their this identity will their existence have true meaning and value. They are the only Western Rite Orthodox Konkani Christians with an independent Catholic tradition. So the question arises, are the Brahmo or Western Rite Orthodox Christians with an independent Catholic tradition treated fairly under the Malankara Church? However, I don't think so. The Malankara Church over several decades accused the remaining Western Rite Orthodox community of Brahmo out of their indigenous cultural practices, history and faith by overpowering them with ecclesiastical rule, reducing them to a mere memory of their past. However, any sort of integration process of the independent Catholic community in Brahmova with the Malankara Church should have been done by respecting and fully maintaining their original status quo. That means the Western Rite tradition, history, practices, faith, and full autonomy. And to be frank, who is genuinely interested in the faith of the remaining independent Catholic Christians? So that brings us to the question, is a revival possible for Western Rite in Malankara Church? It's a difficult question, very difficult situation, but what are some of the solutions, possible solutions that we may look into? They may constitute a Western Rite revival committee or an association, whatever, with approval of the Synod, Managing Committee, and Malankara Association. Establish dialogue, establish fruitful and constructive dialogue with Brahmovarians and Malankara Church leadership and Malankara Nasrani community. Switching to the original Latin Rite with Orthodox correction and subsequently removing Syriac and Malankara Rite elements. Helping Brahmor community to revive their Western Rite Orthodox practices. Develop a Western Rite Orthodox center. Publish authentic literature on Western Rite history. Initiate a museum in Brahmor. Educate Brahmorians and Malankara Nasranis alike. If you look for the copies of the independent Catholic newspaper, you need to travel to Ceylon to get copies, to Sri Lanka, to Colombo, actually. That's why I said that there should be a Western Rite Orthodox center with a museum on whatever facilities we can give them, and to develop it into a heritage center. Ordaining clergy, ordaining bishops and clergy in Latin Rite, in Latin vestments from the Brahmor community. It is very interesting to understand that during the consecration of Reni Villath, Archbishop Reni Villath, he was consecrated in Latin Rite. And St. Gregory of Paramala and St. Athanasius Paul, both of them assisted Alvaris Julius, because Alvaris Julius was the main consecrator. They assisted the consecration in Latin Rite Mass. Then strengthen the community, strengthen inter-community bonds for an unified effort. Seeking full autonomy through a written MOU with the Malankara Church, or provide a tomos of autonomy by the Synod as an autonomous Western Rite Orthodox Metropolitan Archbishopric, which is, I don't know whether that is going to happen in near future or it is going to happen ever, but at least we may take effort to realize that goal. So coming to the last part of the presentation, we may also look into why there are objections towards Western Rite communities or Western Rite among Eastern Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox churches. So first and foremost view is that Orthodox only view. East is always right. We do not need any Western Rite. We do not need Western liturgy. No, they are wrong. They are heresy. We only need Orthodox Christian dogmas, liturgy, and stuff like that. Having different liturgical traditions within the same Orthodox Church is incorrect. Some critics believe that it is incorrect. Western rites currently used in Orthodoxy are not a direct, unbroken continuation of the pre-schism Western liturgical traditions. So their systems are corrupt, so we do not need them. Western rite is understood as a kind of ritualism that lacks the spiritual and historic depth of a rite that has been in continuous use. Again, the problem with the continuation of liturgical practices and spiritual aspects. And some critics believe that it is reverse uniatism, because the Latin Church has created union churches, uniate churches from the Eastern Orthodox and the Oriental Orthodox churches. So we need to create Western rites from the Latin community or the Anglican community. Some critics believe that way, so we don't need reverse unitism. It may lead to further conflicts with the Roman Catholic Church and the dialogue with the Vatican. Western rites converts to Orthodox Christianity. They do not completely embrace Orthodox faith. This is what some people believe. And also they practice certain unorthodox things like Sacred Heart, Precious Blood, etc., which is part and parcel of the Western Rite traditions. Orthodox Rite itself was proven to be an effective vehicle for evangelism in the West. So we do not need a Western Rite Orthodox Rite to evangelize people and to bring them to Orthodox Christianity. The modern Western Rite system is relatively new, so we do not know what would be the end result. That's what some critics believe. The Western Rite faces distrust from some Byzantine Rite parishioners who hold suspicious about anything Western. Because some of the Eastern Orthodox parishioners, they believe that Western Rite Orthodox people are spies from the West. There are people who believe it that way. Western Rite has not been successful in converting non-Orthodox Western Christians than the Byzantine Rite, because they believe that only people are interested in Orthodox East. They are only interested in Byzantine Rite or Oriental Orthodox rites. They are not that interested in Western rites. And Western Rite Orthodoxy has not been that effective in bringing people. Then they say that converts are often drawn to the Orthodox Church apostolic, authentic, original, historical continuity, and so hence we do not need Western rites. So these are the general objections towards the creation of Western rites, propagating Western rites among Eastern and Oriental Orthodox communities. So checking the current status of the Western Rite among Oriental Orthodox churches, we know that there are certain Western Rite Orthodox communities in Brazil and Guatemala under the Syriac Orthodox Church. However, very soon they will be Syriacites. Some of the communities who joined the Syriac Orthodox community, the church, has already been Syriacized. So eventually they will follow the suit. You can see some of the pictures on the screen. Ethiopian Orthodox Church, they had a few parishes in USA. But not sure if they are still using the Western Rite, they're following the Western Rite traditions or liturgical practices. As of our understanding, there are no Western Rite communities under the Coptic, Armenian, or Eritrean Orthodox churches. But several independent Western Rite communities exist. They are willing to associate with the Oriental Orthodox churches. But unfortunately, the thing is that it needs a proper, authentic, and deep scouting before accepting them for a dialogue or going forward for some sort of association. So another interesting thing is the current status of Western Rite Orthodox communities among the Eastern Orthodox churches. There are canonical Western Rite Orthodox communities within the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia and Antiochian Orthodox Christian Archdiocese. Rokor is actually an autonomous part of the Moscow Patriarchate, and Antiochian Orthodox Archdiocese is an autonomous part of the Antiochian Patriarchate, the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Antioch in Syria. So, and there are several independent Western Rite Orthodox churches as well. So when it comes to Rokor, they created a Vigarite in 2011, but it was dissolved in 2013 due to oppositions. And we have discussed some of the oppositions in the previous slide. But irrespective of the resistance, Rokor, Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia, continue to establish new Western Rite parishes, monasteries, and they still ordain clergy. There are around like 30 parishes headed by Vicar General reporting directly to the first hierarch of the Rokor. And also Rokor Synod has promised to continue their support and care for the Western Rite Orthodox communities. So when it comes to Antiochian Patriarchate, the Antiochian Christian Orthodox Christian Archdiocese based in USA, they established a Western Rite parish community in 1958, and it is organized into Western Rite Vigarate. There are around 25 communities within the Antiochian Patriarchate. But I'm not sure that whether they have more communities now. And they have one or two Western Rite Orthodox communities with OCA, Orthodox Church in America, but I think they were transferred to the jurisdiction of the ROCO. So no more exist under OCA or other churches in the US. So coming to the final note, conclusion, the Western Orthodox communities are not a threat to Eastern or Oriental Orthodoxy. That's very important to understand. They represent an opportunity for individuals to embrace Orthodox Christianity, Eastern way of life, Eastern Christianity, while preserving their Western identity, traditions, practices with appropriate Orthodox adaptations. The Orthodox hierarchy and faithful may create space for the growth and development of these Western Rite communities, allowing them to coexist alongside Eastern traditions without compromising the values or perspectives of either. So this is all what I would like to say as a final note, and I hope and wish that Western Orthodox communities continue to flourish and continue to flourish as a community, and they exist side by side with both Eastern and Oriental Orthodox churches. Thank you.
So we'll move on to question answer session. So I have this first question, like that the profession of faith part was interesting because they accept the Roman Catholic theologians and the way the Roman Catholic theologians define them, and still then how did they manage to be under the Orthodox tradition? Like why do they want to be the part of Orthodox, the Malankara Orthodox Church, when they follow Roman Catholic Western tradition, Western theology, not tradition, but Western theology? Like it's isn't it very against the Orthodox theology? Like, did it
Yes.
cause any theological fights or dispute?
I do not. I do not have a single answer, a single response to this. There are various factors actually, because first of all, we need to understand the political, socio-political situation during that time. Number one. Number two, they wanted to associate with an indigenous church following an Orthodox Christian faith, where they considered it to be an unbroken apostolic faith or lineage. So being part of the Orthodox Church doesn't mean that, as I had mentioned in the presentation, doesn't mean that they completely submit themselves administratively or spiritually to the Orthodox Church. It was a give and take policy. It was a detachment with attachment and attachment without detachment. So mostly, when you go through the documents published by Alvarez Julius or René Villath, they used to say that the West was Orthodox. This is what we also follow. The West was Orthodox. Roman Catholic was Orthodox. So during the time of the Great Schism, they were left out of Orthodox Christianity. So it's an opportunity for these independent Catholics or the Western Rite community to get connected to the unbroken apostolic lineage through an Orthodox community. But that was not only the reason. There was a political reason, there was a spiritual reason, there was a theological reasons, several reasons put together. That's why they approached the Malankara church, a church that followed Orthodox faith, to be under its spiritual protection.
So, but still,
I'm not sure whether you got it clear. I mean,
the thing is that in 1954, I guess, the Catholic Church introduced the Immaculate Conception, the concept of Immaculate,
yeah,
concept that is Immaculate. But
yeah.
Filioque, the Holy Spirit thing, and the first Great Schism, and everything isn't all against the Orthodox tradition. So when someone comes to our church and they're saying, we'll be under your political protection or spiritual protection, but still will follow the heresy, which we thought a heresy and which caused a great schism in the church, and still someone is coming and asking for a spiritual political protection. And why should the church go for a political protection when they are heretics according to our beliefs?
See, the thing is that when they become Western Rite Orthodox community, they become such a community with Orthodox corrections. with Orthodox corrections. So whatever the Orthodox churches proposes to be corrected with their faith and with their liturgy or with their practices, that has been accommodated. They follow the Nicene Creed. But their traditions are defined by the Roman Catholic Church because their origin is from the Latin community or from the Anglican community. They cannot deny that. They do not want to just to come to the Orthodox Church and completely submit themselves to be a new version of Orthodoxy. No, this is not what their plan was. To exist with their Western Rite traditions, but to be in association with Orthodox Christianity and to continue as independent Catholics practicing original Catholicism, rejecting the heresy or teachings of the Roman Catholic Church, which cannot be accepted by the Orthodox Church. There are a lot of teachings accepted by the Orthodox Church, right? Roman Catholics also accept some of the teachings of the, or there are certain common understanding that is always there. But there are certain things that's not accepted by the Orthodox Church. That corrections are being, that corrections were actually implemented. That's why they were more comfortable as well. If you were asking, and also their lifestyle, their practices, their way of, their code of conduct, their values are totally different from the Malankara Nasrani community. It is not that easy for someone to just come and be part of our community because Malankara Nasrani community, we have our own systems, right? Syriac Patriarchate, the Syriac people, they had their own systems. So you can be politically or religiously aligned with the Malankara Church or the Syriac Patriarchate without compromising your traditions and practices and your history.
By traditions, you mean just the cultural, liturgical
The cultural part, of course, no. Not only that, the liturgical traditions. They are not. They are not into Orthodox liturgy. They always Western Rite. They are into Western Latin Rite liturgical practices. But while practice them, they of course make sure that Orthodox corrections are contained.
Okay. Yeah,
That is the complex structure of Western Rite Orthodoxy. That used to be the complex structure. Still, that is a structure. That is why still we face a lot of vehement opposition to Western Rite Orthodoxy. As you said, because you put it in a very relevant question. Why should they stay? Why should they believe something defined by the Roman Catholic theologians and they want to be part of the Orthodox Church? But this is the only way it will work. Or else we'll have to say completely that, see, we are not in a position to accommodate you, to be very frank. You can go by yourself. But the leaders of during the time, the Malankara church leaders, they were so visionary. See, I'll tell you something, particularly Saint Gregory of Parimala. We used to say that he was a very conservative Christian prelate. He was not just a conservative spiritual prelate. He was much beyond that. Otherwise, you would not have been supporting and encouraging Western rites. Just imagine a Syriac prelate who never had any idea about how to consecrate a bishop in the Western Latin Rite Mass. He went to Sri Lanka and he assisted the consecration. Even though there was a lot of debates between Alvarez Julius and these communities, they agreed to assist Alvarez Julius to consecrate Reni Villat in Latin Rite.
Understood. Is there still, like you have mentioned about the 5%, they still follow Latin tradition to some extent?
They have, because during the time I visited in 2009. So they have certain traditions. One that I can recall, it's like it is less than 5%, to be frank. Let us say that they do not have these monthly subscriptions. Usually in Malankara Nasrani churches, they have the subscriptions, right? They don't have that. And they have the Feast of All Saints. And they have certain practices I still recall, which is not that Eastern. It is Western, which is practiced during the liturgy. But I cannot exactly recall that practice because it was many years back. But as of now, if I go, I don't know whether they still practice the same. I don't know. Maybe they are 100% Syriacized or Malankarized. I don't know.
Okay. Like, do they still
another classic example. Why are they still called? Why do they address Neurono, Rock Lopus Neuron as Padre Rock Lopus Neurono? Why are they not addressing him as Father? Have you ever thought of that case? They only call him padre. Padre is not an Orthodox way of addressing the
Yeah.
priest. That's typical Latin way of address. Even the Eastern Catholics won't use that. It's completely used by Latin rites. So if you look into such small things, you can still see that the debris of Western Rite traditions, practices, apart from culture and liturgy, it is still there among them. But they are not given a space actually to practice it freely.
Yeah.
I was just remembering one thing when you mentioned about the practices that as they those they are still following. One of
Mhm.
those things can be added in this way that even I have when Brahmawar Cathedral was going to be consecrated, there were some debates that were happening around whether we can keep the. I mean, sorry to mention this statue of Saint Mary inside the altar.
Okay,
So
okay,
there was
okay,
a
okay.
bigger debate, as per my understanding. So
Uh-huh.
so few of them they just said that no we have changed a lot, and they said that it's not something that have to be kept over there, but
Yeah.
still few of its community leaders came up and said that it's part of our tradition, we have to
Yes.
follow it. That's
See,
why they put the same thing over there.
yeah, I understand. But also, thing is that if the Malankara leadership is not that happy with using statues, they can ask the Western Rite community to create their own Western Rite Orthodox icons. They have it actually. They have it actually. But see, forcing a community to follow a particular thing, irrespective of their history, traditions, and culture, is not that great. Just imagine how the Malankara Church suffered under the Catholic persecution, the Portuguese persecution, to be quite frank. We still have elements from the Latin Anglican churches, right? We still have certain elements from the Eastern, Western, Anglican, Catholic. We have certain elements still there. It was not. It, actually, we were not supposed to follow or absorb such elements. It was imposed on us or imbibed by us. Do you have any more questions or anything that you did not understand, anything that you couldn't follow from my presentation?
One
We
question.
will encourage our followers. Just if you have any questions, please be free to write it down in the comment section so that we can take it up over here. We are so sorry that we can't invite you inside the streaming platform because of its restrictions, and we'll be really happy to hear from your mind, like even if it is reflections, we'll be really happy to hear it in this comment section so that we can take it into our consideration. Jaren.
Yeah, the, regarding the Brahmava community losing its original identity, like what's their actual opinion right now? Do they still have that urge to go back to their Latin? They have forgotten all of it.
Yeah, Jarin, I have not spoken to anyone particular recently regarding but I would say that I was so surprised that one of the persons whom I spoke 2 years back, or 1 year back, I believe, over the phone, he was asking who was Alvarez. He was asking to me, we need to know who was Alvarez. I was shocked and surprised because they know who is, but they are not in a position. I mean, they are not educated with what do you call the life and works of Alvarez in a deeper manner. This is what I understood. Second thing, I hear from here and there, I'm not sure, that some people, they are not comfortable with what has happened. Some people, maybe they want to return back, I don't know. But since I have not spoken to anyone recently, I'm not in a position to say that. But I've just mentioned what some community members spoke to me when I like 2 years back or maybe 1 year back over a phone conversation.
So,
And if you,
as the
yeah, yeah,
presentation was going on, I was just thinking about this particular thing that I read 1 or 2 weeks ago. So, they recently Anglican Orthodox Church in UK bought, I will say, a full parish from Anglican Church who was
Mm-hmm.
ready to join Orthodox Church.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was reading it, I just understood that they were not taken as such as a Western rite or anything. As you mentioned, still this thought is going on all over that
Mm-hmm.
they can be full Orthodox. Then why we are just
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
give
yeah.
them Western rite status? So, as per my understanding, this particular parish and its members were uh, asked to go through the same process of becoming Orthodox from I will not say other religion. I will say for a non-religious person. And now I also heard that this Anglican Orthodox Church in UK is planning to make a separate parish for them. But still, just to encourage mission movements and to go on with the mission. But at the same time, we all, when we talk about Western rites inside Eastern Church or inside Oriental churches, I don't really think that we still have that courage to ask those who are outside to be part of the church as Western rite, or by at least giving some type of autonomy to them. Is this just because of some past experiences that the church experienced, or is this just because of the uh, lack of understanding, or is this just because that the jurisdiction will be divided, if some jurisdictions like this will be created inside the jurisdictions of the church traditionally?
Uh,
What's your
Don,
thoughts?
I think we have already gone through some of the aspects why people actually oppose. There are several reasons. First of all, such opposition comes from fanatic orthodox dogmatic people with fanatic orthodox dogmatic outlook. They are the one to oppose these things. And second thing is that these people, there's also a political thing that we have discussed. These people think that anyone coming from an Anglican, Methodist, or a Roman Catholic or a Western background, they come with Western values, which doesn't go hand in hand with the Orthodox Church. Third thing, we already have a right, Eastern right, as Jarin, as Jarin mentioned, we already have a right. Why should you entertain something alien to us? We don't need that, and we have our own missions. We can evangelize people. So why should we really have it? But the opposition, big opposition, is actually found among Eastern Orthodox. I don't think that Oriental Orthodox, of course, oppositions will be there, but not as fanatic as Eastern Orthodox. And they are the one to have more westernized parishes and communities than Oriental Orthodox. And just imagine what happened to the Russian church. They dissolved it, right? And now, after some time, they have formulated some kind of Viga, right? But the thing is that these Western Rite communities are not being encouraged in a way that they needs to be really encouraged. So there is always a resistance. East is right. Eastern Orthodox Apostolic dogmas are right. Our faith is right. We do not want anyone from the other side. These things come. So there is no single reason. There are several reasons for this.
At the same time, we have to think about the Catholic Church, the West, who is still trying to make fissures inside the Eastern
Yeah, of course, they will
Christian
do.
world.
They have been very successful in creating union churches, unionism. And what have they done? Of course, there have been some Latinization among union churches, but many of the union churches, they still follow the Eastern practices, just like the Western Rite. Within the Catholic Church, they follow the Eastern practices, and they have been still successful. Take it from me, still successful in Kerala in converting people from the Malankara Church. The unions are doing that. Can you deny the fact that they are not converting? They are still converting. And when they come to the dialogue and all with the Pope, they say that, yeah, great, we hug each other, we shake hands, we drink a coffee. Over a coffee, we have the dialogue. Then the Latin Church will say that, no, we do not encourage uniates to absorb any Orthodox church. That is against our policy. That is one part. The other part, on the ground level, the reality is different. Go to Ukraine. Apart from Malankara, go to Ukraine. In Ukraine, you can see that Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, they've been confiscating properties from the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And because of the conflict, the war with Russia, things are completely messed up there. Don't you know it better, right? It's happening there, and people are
Yes, it
protesting.
is.
What is the whole
Yes, it is,
point?
and
And there is no.
there you can also see another thing that the one of the so-called Orthodox Church, which is Orthodox Church of Ukraine, they are now
Yeah,
trying to integrate with UGCC, Ukrainian Greek
yeah.
Orthodox Church, and which like where is Orthodoxy and where it stands, where is jurisdictions? You all used to talk about jurisdictional differences, Rome, Constantinople, and others, and now it's just like. You don't have any lines and you don't have any borders. You just have one idea, that is politics.
See, you spoke about jurisdictional issues because people in Orthodox Church may consider bringing a different jurisdiction. But actually, if you bring Western Rite communities, you can arrange them to be a separate community within Orthodox Church, as a vicarate or an archbishopric or a metropolitanate. But we do not have the courage to do that. That is actually the fact. That is actually the fact. We do not have the courage to do that. We are tempted in other ways. So if you have the courage to do that, apart from your political, your dogmatic things, you will be in a position to give a space for the Western Rite Orthodox communities to exist side by side with the Eastern Orthodox or Oriental Orthodox. And trust me, that will not hurt the Eastern Church or its faith or dogmas. Because if you have clear-cut things written as tomos, written on papers, documents, and proper monitoring, these communities can exist side by side. And the Rocker and Antiochian Patriarchate, they have proved that these communities can exist. If they can do, why not us?
As
If you
you
want to
mentioned about,
strictly monitor them, okay, you create a commission under the Synod and monitor them every day. Go and monitor them every day. No one cares.
we all
But
know
you, you
about
you you are not in a position to do that. At the same time, you keep on rejecting. We don't need any Western Rite coming to us. Like, please keep away from us. I don't find anything logical in that.
we all know about what happened to Archbishop Warwick of Glastonbury, which tried to join Coptic Orthodox Church, and that now what's their situation is all about. And they even said to be a Western Rite Archbishop Warwick, and now we know what's his situation. I hope our viewers can understand what I'm meaning about it. I'm talking about British Orthodox Church, which was once Archbishop Warwick of Glastonbury, if I'm not wrong, and they were also Western Rite ones.
Yeah.
They tried their best to integrate with Coptic Church, and now they are outside.
Yeah, there are such communities. There was something called a French Orthodox Church. Again, see, it all depends on the visionary vision of the leaders of the church. Why did Peter III promote Western Rite Orthodox communities in England and in Europe? Because he had the vision of bringing this so-called Orthodox faith to Western people. But when he consecrated someone for that purpose, he did not consecrate that person for an Eastern Rite mission. He consecrated Julius Fred for what? Western Rite Orthodox mission. So he created Western Rite Orthodox community. Unfortunately, we lost it. So there are even the same case with the Malankara church leaders during the time of Alvarez Julius. They never forced the Western Rite Church, the Independent Catholic Church, to submit themselves to the Malankara Church or the Syriac Patriarchate. All their prime objective or their vision was to support the community. Of course, they succeeded to an extent, but later, once the visionary leaders passed away, the whole community disintegrated. And it was a great loss for the church. And no one considered this to be a great loss because the whole of Sri Lanka, just imagine, we had a lot of people there. From Jaffna to Colombo, from Colombo to Jaffna, and also many pockets of the southern part of India in Karnataka and in Tamil Nadu. We lost all those communities. If you still go, that's why I said, if you still go, you can find old churches there. Debris of the Western Rite Orthodox, what do you call this, missionary efforts. But it's a complex thing. We do not have a solution just being in discussion with them or discussing ourselves a day or two. But some sort of effort should be taken to accommodate these people.
We all hope that these discussions or these type of conceptual clarity which are given by independent researchers who have given the time in this particular research will be helpful for the community over there in Brahmavar or the lost communities there in Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka, Tamil Nadu, and there in Goa. And when we conclude this particular session, I am really happy to see that many of our viewers were actively participating in the session, and your ideas, your questions can be added to the comment section of this video, and we will be really happy to respond to it. And on the other side, I'm really thankful for the the great presentation that was done by George Alexander, and I know that he is carrying out something like this after a long time, which he has. I mean, I think he has done something like this for the last time during the publication of the second part of Western Rite or book, and now, as he mentioned, there should be some type of interest among the community and among the churches to uphold these type of researches further than it just continuing as the known history that's there near to us. It should be practical. That's something that we all need, and that we all are trying to see through all these sections. And through this section, IOTA is also trying to uphold that same thought through our viewers, and to just share the same with our viewers, that the ideas, the things that's done in the past, they can be practical. If those things, we have to study them. That's first thing. And the second thing, if that can be practically done later in this period too, it has to be restarted or it has to be conducted. So let's all pray for the best for the community there in Brahmavar, and for to for I mean, how I don't know how which word can be used, to refine or to reconnect with those lost communities in Goa, Sri Lanka, and elsewhere, wherever it is. And at this moment, I also like to thank the whole work done by Orthodoxy Koinite page, Mar related to Mar Alvarez Julius, and related to the Western Rite. And when we conclude this session, I also like to put this point to you all. We all encourage independent researchers and thinkers to join us with this mission that we have started in the name of IOTA. And you all can join us through sending us your resume or sending us your interest to our email, which is pinned here in our YouTube. And you can also find us in all social media platforms. And I hope that this will be an opening for all those independent researchers who like to come out with their own thoughts, research, and hope to see more sessions like this. And once again, thank you, George Alexander, for joining us. If you have any concluding words, I'm just giving out the mic, and then we will just conclude the session. And hope to see you soon with another session over here in the same platform.
Okay, thank you, Don, and thank you, Jarin, and thank you all of who are behind IOTA. Thank you for the opportunity. Just wanted to ask before I conclude that was there anything that you couldn't follow or anything that was not clear from my presentation? Jarin, Don, or anyone, like, was it clear to you? I know that this presentation is like very limited because of our time limitations and stuff. I tried my level best to include whatever I could, but if you do not follow anything, just let me know. I hope it's clear. Fine. Anyway,
of course.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much. And also for people who are comfortable with Malayalam, if they want to read something on the Western Rite, there is an article published. I've published an article in Pachakudra. Actually, it is a publication by DC Books. 2024 August, Pachakudra. Actually, I hope people are quite familiar with these publications. So it speaks about the socio-political and religious contributions of Western Rite leaders in Goa, Ceylon, and southern part of India. So you can, if someone is interested, they can also go through the article. So once again, thank you so much for the wonderful opportunity. Thank you, IOTA team, for actually taking me back to the memories, a little bit of nostalgia, connecting me back to something that I did for 10 years, actually. Assisting and being part. And also, I need to thank a lot of people who were involved with the MART project, particularly Dr. Ajesh T. Philip, Father Thomas Georgis, and all those Prakash, my friend Prakash, and my friend Vipin, people, because these people were all in the field actually. They were traveling here and there to collect data and details. And all those people who supported us, especially Bishop Sergi Toro, Patriarch Abba Serapim of the British Orthodox Church, and all those prelates and good people, good-hearted people who supported this research. And it was a wonderful journey. Hope the church and the people and the leaders and the faithful would make something good out of this presentation. Thank you so much.
Once again, thank you all for tuning to IOTA. We all hope that we can bring up similar areas of discussions and we can open up new discourses and new discourses among the whole community over here in India and elsewhere. Thanks a lot. Stay tuned for next session. Thank you.